Before we dive into today's episode, I have something truly special to share. Next September, I'll be leading an intimate women's retreat through the south of France and northern Italy, and you're invited. Picture this: mornings exploring the colorful markets of the French Riviera, afternoons sipping wine, and a hotel view with golden Mediterranean sunsets. Whether you love photography, food, or just want to reconnect with your playful creative self, this trip is designed for you. Spots are limited, so if all this sounds like your kind of adventure, please visit tourwithabsolutely.com and look for the tour France and Italy with Crystal. You can also send me a message or check out the show notes. Hey guys, my name's Crystal Kenny, and I'm in love with creating. All things artistic and imagination involved. I'm an American girl who chased her creative dreams all the way to Paris, France, making a living using photography. This podcast takes you inside the stories of all the artsy folks I've met along the way and gives you that extra push to discover your creative gifts. The desire to create is deeply inside each and every one of us, and I give you the tools and inspiration to find a new way of living a more creative life. This is La Vie Creative, the podcast. So welcome to the show, Claudia.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
I was so excited when Jason introduced me. He sent so many wonderful people my way, a lot of fantastic poets and artists, and it's so nice to have you on the show.
My God, I can imagine. I feel like Jason just knows everyone.
Yeah.
He himself is amazing, so it makes sense.
Yeah, he's a proper artist himself. He's fantastic. Sure. So talk a little bit about your journey from Australia to Paris. What brought you here?
Well, this is actually my 5th year living in Paris, which feels incredibly surreal, but I moved when I was 18, and I kind of just always wanted to come here. I was here a little bit when I was a kid, and it's actually sort of the place that I have my first memories from childhood, and it just always really resonated with me. So kind of the moment that I finished school, I was like, that's where I have to go, and it was kind of really always the plan for me, which I think I was very naive about it. I thought it would be really easy, which I understand now it's not, but I'm actually glad I was naive because I don't think I ever would have done anything if I sort of fully knew how difficult it can be. So I'm really glad I was a bit head in the clouds about it, but it was just, it was always the end goal for me to end up here, at least at this phase of my life.
Definitely. I think all of us, once we get here and we go through all the turmoil, we're like, yeah, I would not have done this if I'd known better.
Yeah, so it's good not to know, for sure.
Exactly. Ignorance is bliss.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, because if you know all the hoops you're going to have to jump through, you might not do it.
French bureaucracy and everything.
Exactly. We all go there, and that's why we all bond.
Yeah, exactly. But then especially just being from Australia, I think I just didn't comprehend quite how far away it is until I started living here.
Definitely, yeah. It's hard to see family, friends. It's a long trip. It's a long one.
Yeah, but I mean, it's worth it, of course. I don't regret anything.
And talk a little bit about how Paris has influenced your artistic expression. You do poetry, acting. Talk a little bit more about how Paris has influenced that.
Well, I think Paris really opened something up for me because I've always really enjoyed being artistic. It's always been a really big part of my life. But Brisbane, which is my hometown, Australia, while it has so many amazing things about it that I become more aware of and more grateful for as I get older, it's not an incredibly creative or artistic place. In order to seek out art, you really have to scratch below the surface and really go out of your way. Whereas in Paris, it's just everywhere and it's so accessible. And so I think coming here and finding this community of artists over time has just massively helped me evolve as an artist and made me realize that so much more than what I thought was possible, and has instilled me with so much more confidence and really emboldened me in the same way that I hope I can embolden other people in their journey, because it is give and take. But I think it's done wonders for me in terms of that, and just being able to meet people on a similar path to me as well, I'd say is the biggest thing that Paris has given me. But also it's just, I mean, it's a very inspiring city. I don't think that's a sort of new thing to say, but it really is, it's really pulsing with energy and history, and it's such a beautiful place to be, which I think makes all art you do kind of in conversation with the city, even if you're not directly referencing it, I would say, just because it is such an inspiring place to be.
Definitely. And talk a little bit about the creative community you've formed here and what it's like to work with other artists here.
Yeah, I mean, there's honestly just such incredible people here everywhere you go. The expat community at large is just full of wonderful people. But I think for me, there's a few different distinct creative communities. So I sort of have my theater community and my poetry community would be my biggest one. But I've met just amazing poets and writers through going to open mics here in the city, and you hear insane pieces of work on the regular. But also everyone is so kind and they're so supportive, and I'm really, really grateful for that. And so I think that's sort of the main way I found other writers. I found that community there. And then through theater, it's just kind of been like building up a resume and going to auditions and working for Alchemy Theater, a company here in Paris that I found really incredible actors who have also introduced me to like other people. And also Paris is really small, so actually the more people you get to know, the more you realize it's a little bit of a circle artistically, and everyone knows everyone, which is funny.
Yeah, definitely. I've talked to some people from Alchemy and it is a circle.
Cool.
Everyone knows everybody. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about your pen name, Giselle Linder. You recently released your second collection of poetry. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, well, I came up with the name Giselle Linder when I was quite young and just kind of stuck with it, I guess. I sort of always wanted to have a pen name, which is sort of silly, I guess, because I do also go by my real name. Like I am comfortable with people calling me both. But I do like the separation of it, especially with something as vulnerable as poetry. And also I was really inspired as a teenager by old Hollywood actresses. And I kind of always noticed that really none of them went by their real names. And I kind of wanted to emulate a little bit of that era. So that's kind of why I wanted to choose something a little bit eccentric to go by. And also, I mean, I guess maybe it's also about always being led to Paris, because Giselle is maybe a little bit more French than Claudia. But I got the name Giselle from the ballet of the same name, and I got Linder from a 1920s, well, actually a little bit more 1910s silent screen star called Max Linder. But yeah, so I just released my second collection of poetry under that name through Dark 30 Poetry Publishing, who is an indie press based in England. And it's been such a whirlwind of a journey. Like it came out about a month ago now, but it sort of feels like it's been out for years, and like it came out just yesterday at the same time somehow.
That's amazing. And talk about what inspired these poems. Like, is there a general theme?
It's definitely a little bit of an eclectic book, but I think sort of the general theme that kind of runs through everything as a through line is kind of this pursuit of pleasure, I guess, and how far you kind of go to try and get the most out of your life, and also kind of what happens when you fall short of that ultimate goal of just going wild with joy. And it's quite kind of hedonistic in that sense. Like all the visuals and some of the bases of the poems were inspired by like the 1920s and flapper girls and people like Zelda Fitzgerald. So I think there's kind of this thread of like reckless abandon running through the book, and kind of there's certain poems of like you try and set that down, you try and set that aside, but you just got to keep going back to the pursuit, I guess, is a little bit of what the book's about.
Oh, I love that. Zelda is one of my favorite people in history. I'm obsessed.
Oh God, she was amazing.
She was so amazing. What an eclectic woman. Oh my goodness.
Mm.
And I love how you talk about like the pursuit of joy. I mean, I feel like Paris is such a place to create that, especially as an adult. I always call it like Disneyland for adults, you know? Like
Oh,
there's
absolutely.
just so much joy and pleasure to be had here when you're not dealing with French administration.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fun things to do. We would love for you to share one of your poems with us.
Oh, I'd love to. I've picked out one that's kind of, I mean, there's a little bit of pleasure in it, but it's kind of, it also goes hand in hand, which I think with another one of the themes, which I think is kind of an examination of womanhood specifically, because I think that pursuit of pleasure as a woman can be a bit different, and some shame you experience for it too can be a bit different, and what's expected of you. But this is a poem. It's the second last one in the book. It's called The Glass Auditorium. The glass auditorium echoes with unearthly silence, waiting for someone to accept their loneliness with grace, or with enough rage to entertain. With shaking knees, I take the shaken laurel leaves, I take the stage. The triumph is never reached and is always the same. My church bell voice rings out to empty crowds. Holy is the degenerate, holy is the depressant, holy is the adulterer. Holy is the Ouroboros of pain we weave round and round one another, and the secret flesh chased in cheap imitation of forever. Holy is my endless depth of forgiveness which I bestow upon nobody. Holy is the ruse, blessed be the bruise that I blacken for the betterment of my tortured strings. The harp is a crying woman bent, blessed be the way she sings. Blessed be the burnt paper that wishes us well. Holy be the crematorium into which we fell, burning up side by side, praying for some darkness to blot out this light, while the last sun we'll ever see streams through unending glass panes, though it all ends the same, with the slow, soft removal of neck, name, and shoes, and the loss of something truthful, the last thing I had to say. Well, now, even my shadow is walking away. Holy be the dress that like a wave of water slides from the skin. Blessed be that which is not but is called sin. Blessed be the harassment. Blessed be the embarrassment which culminates in that whirlpool of shame. Blessed be the bed. Holy be the head where they manifested their fantasies, so that's all they remained. Holy be the men who laughed at my fears and then enacted them onto my body. Holy be the dead weight they carry and the ghosts that they marry. I am not done with the resisting, and the resisting is not done with me. Exquisite agony, blessed be. Holy be the hands such as these, reaching out for a peace never received. Regardless, blessed be the need. I rid myself of every hair on my head. I rid myself of ease. My patella rolls out with a piano shout and cloud is somewhere on the floor. I have more. I have more. Holy be the spine and everything I wish was mine. Blessed be my need to please, which takes me further than I ever could have envisioned. Yes, it takes me further and further away from me. Holy be the head, my head, instead, with flights of fancy that never stay dormant and gone. I dreamt the auditorium, and the dream, like a road to hell, goes on and on. The lost of me, some torso, some legs, parades for a room which hums like bees. One marionette arm raises after the other. Death as the final striptease.
I love it. It's beautiful. And like
Thank you.
the rhyme, the up and down, there's so much going on there. Maybe do you care to elaborate like what inspired this poem?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it was probably inspired a little bit by like being a performer and being an actor. And just that, because I think I am really fascinated by the act of performance in general, and the masks you wear for it, regardless if you're being a character or not. Um, and I think as well, it was just a little bit inspired by like, I don't know what was in the water, but I had a period of time last year where I think I was getting like sexually harassed by men every single day for about 2 or 3 weeks. And it was sort of, it quite disturbed me. And it was towards when I had to hand in the manuscript. And I think it influenced some of the final poems I wrote, because it sort of, it messed with my head a little bit, and it made me feel like even just to go outside, I had to be incredibly alert, and that to indulge in my joy and my pleasure, I had to have a lot of self-protection just to do that. And I think it influenced a few of the final poems I wrote for the book, including that one.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I'm sorry you went through that. I feel like that's something a lot of women deal with here. And it is
Yeah,
sad that we
for
have to
sure.
twice. And I think it's something that we don't talk about enough. Like, I think like as tourists, you don't notice it as much, but when you live
Yeah.
here, it can be a real issue. So I'm glad you're able to kind of heal that working through your writing too.
Oh, 100%. I think as well, it's just so normalized. And on one hand, it's kind of like, well, what can you do? You almost have to just laugh it off because you can't let it ruin your whole week. But I was letting it ruin my week because I was in a mood.
Yeah.
But it's also important to talk about because, I mean, obviously, even a man just going, oh, bonjour, ma belle, is a little, creepy. But it was just like, it was quite serious. Like, I got, followed and stuff. And it was just really freaking me out. So I was like, no, I have to talk about it. I have to say something, and if it cannot be to the men, it has to be in the poem, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. And I know myself and a lot of friends have gone through the same thing with, men following and being weird. And yeah,
100.
it's scary. I'm glad you're bringing that to light.
Yeah, I mean, it's terrible. I'm sorry that you deal with it as well, but I mean, every woman does, which is awful to say. It is.
Yeah, it's become too normalized in Paris. I mean, I'm glad women are
Yeah.
talking more about it and sticking up for each other because it's not normal.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about how being a poet and an actress, how do you navigate between these two forms of storytelling? Do they intersect? I mean, you mentioned that a little bit, but do they intersect in your creative process?
I definitely think they intersect a little bit. Like, like I said, I do think that being a performer comes up in my poetry. And I also do think that being a poet sometimes lends to the acting and what I like to do on stage. Like, I always remember, like, last year for Alchemy Theater, I was part of, like, a scratch night they did, which is just you can, like, debut self-devised work. And I wrote a monologue for it. And I brought it to a feedback group. And I remember someone in the group who didn't really know necessarily that I write poetry immediately went, oh, that feels like a spoken word piece. And I was like, well, that sounds about right for me. So I do think they interact. And I think that they interact as well because I actually loved writing before I loved acting. And I just really love any way that you can tell a story, I guess. But I think that they do activate different parts of me because I think that when I'm on stage as a character, for me, it's all about fulfilling the director's vision of the character. And I really enjoy that collaboration process. And I really like kind of feeling like a smaller part of something bigger, which is, of course, what you are. Whereas I guess writing, it's a little bit more like nothing is ever done completely by yourself, but it's a lot more solitary and it's a lot more exploring your own world and really relying on yourself. And I do enjoy that as well. And I think that they're both necessary for me to kind of feel sane. I like working alone for a period of time and then sort of re-emerging into the world and getting to go and collaborate with other people. I think it's a lovely balance. And then I think as well, sort of when I'm performing as an actress, even though the internal world is always working, I think I'm really trying to externalize that world for the sake of the audience. Whereas I think that when I'm working as a poet and I'm performing as a poet, it's more about trying to draw the audience into my internal world. So same result, but opposite process in a way.
Definitely. I love how they intersect like that. And
Thank
talk
you.
a little bit about, in your opinion, what makes a great poem?
I do think great poems come from a place of authenticity, especially emotional authenticity. I think that as an audience member, you can often kind of sense joy or depression or whatever it may be, coming from an honest place in something. I think even if it's subconscious, an audience is really good at picking up on what they feel to be authentic or inauthentic. So I think it has to come from like a very, very real place within yourself, no matter what the subject matter is speaking on in a way, no matter how sort of trivial, I suppose, or serious, even though I suppose nothing's really trivial. So yeah, I guess it has to be honest first and foremost. But at the same time, I think the beautiful thing about poetry is that it's incredibly subjective, almost more than any other art form. And what moves me might not move you, and vice versa. And while that kind of makes it sometimes confusing to navigate, I think that does make it really special at the same time.
Definitely. I think that's really beautifully said because I've interviewed a lot of poets and everyone has a different answer. And yeah,
Yeah,
like you said, it's so subjective.
yeah, of
And
course.
talk a little bit about the difference between poetry and storytelling, or is it the same thing in your opinion?
I think for me, it's kind of the same thing, but I think like with acting versus poetry, I think that if you were to tell a more traditional story versus writing a poem, I think that it kind of unlocks very different parts of you in a way. I think I'm accessing a different self when I write prose as opposed to poetry. But for me, they're very intimately intertwined. Like, I definitely think my poetry collections for me are stories. I think they're just maybe not linear stories that might not make sense to other people in a way as an overall picture. But I'm kind of working hard within ordering the books to kind of find a beginning and a climax and an ending. But I do think they are, I don't know, they have their overlapping moments and they have what sets them apart. But I think maybe what separates them the most is that storytelling is almost like an overall framework and telling the entire thing, or at least as much needs to be said, whereas poetry can be more intimate, and the sort of quote story unquote can be the tiniest fragment of your life, or just 3 lines. Like, that can be the entire thing.
Definitely. Yeah. It's more like broken pieces,
Yeah.
poetry. And what do you hope to do with your work? Like, what is the main purpose? Do you want to influence people? Do you just do it for passion? What do you hope to do with your work?
I'm honestly not sure. I kind of don't think about it too much. I think a lot of poetry for me has just sort of been feeling my way through the dark in a way, because I've just always done it for the love of it. And then things have sort of happened organically because of that, I suppose. I don't really often think about influencing anyone. Maybe it will happen, but I don't think it's my goal. But I think I just fundamentally want to continue to really love what I do and to seek joy in it. I think fundamentally, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That makes perfect sense.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Yeah, talk about some of the challenges that you've faced as an expat here.
Oh, I mean, there's so many. Where to begin? I mean, like we said, all of the paperwork is hard, all of it in France. And then also you've got the language barrier. I really try with my French, but languages are not my natural strong point, unfortunately. But I think maybe the hardest part has been what has also been the most enriching part, which has been building community. Um, it's definitely, I think I'm at a really good place in my life, but I think one of the naiveties I had coming here was I thought that having that community was going to happen like overnight almost, and it very much didn't, which I now see as a blessing in its own way. But I think feeling supported and um, having people who are there for you and having sort of real friends and feeling comfortable within your life and not just like you're a tourist in your own life as well as the city, but feeling actually settled somewhere. It's a really long process. And I think you really have to give yourself time, which is hard when you're impatient for your life to begin, like I am. But I think the biggest challenge is learning to have that patience and learning to sort of take it as it comes, and being okay with watching things build up and fall down and get built up again, and just repeating the cycle all the time. Because that's life everywhere, but I think that's heightened for expats with everyone coming and going all the time.
Definitely. Yeah. Like you said, it takes time and you always assume it's going to be a fast process, which it's
Yeah.
not.
Absolutely not.
So how would you define creativity in your own words?
I think for me, creativity, I think I can't remember who wrote this. I want to say that I saw it in Florence Welch's book, of Florence and the Machine fame. But she wrote in like a poetry book this really simple phrase that I love, where she just wrote joy over perfection. And I think that's a lot of what creativity is. I mean, like at the end of the day, when you're really putting something out there, you got to have high standards for yourself, but the process has to be pleasurable, and if not pleasurable, then necessary for you. And I think it has to delve into sort of that like inner child type thing that a lot of people talk about these days, or maybe even inner adolescent, depending on where it's coming from for you. But it has to access that part of yourself that is just dedicated to discovering and learning and evolving, I think.
I completely agree, and it's kind of hard to define in many ways. I mean,
Yeah.
it's something I ask all my guests, and it's not an easy answer.
And where do you think
No.
creativity comes from? Do you feel like it comes from our life, from somewhere we can't possibly understand, from connectiveness? Where do you think it all comes from?
I mean, probably a combination of all of those things. I think, like, it definitely comes from connecting with others. Like, I'm so inspired by the things that the artists I know are doing, and I'm really excited by them. I think it also just comes from somewhere we probably can't define or explain. But I think it also comes from engaging in art in a broader sense and knowing like what your personal taste is and being able to cultivate that and indulge in it. Like going to the cinema can bring you creativity, for instance. And then I think it also just comes from the living and from the memories. Like I think as an artist, one of your biggest and probably most fun responsibilities is just to kind of stay open to everything and be ready to have the adventures, not just for the sake of the adventure, but in the way that they will serve you because they will.
No, definitely. And what's some of the best creative advice you've ever been given?
I would say, honestly, the best creative advice I've ever been given is from an old friend who just kind of told me, like, to write everything down, ever, even if it seems inconsequential, and just to be dedicated to remembering even those small details, because they really do make up your life and your work. Like, I think I've been given so much good advice that it's hard to think of just one piece. But I'd say maybe that's the best one I can think of, to be really in tune with the small details.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, like you said, writing it down, just being in the moment, that really helps when it comes to creativity.
100%.
And where can people connect with you and learn more about your work?
Probably the best place to find me is on Instagram. My username is Lordy Miss Claudie, like the song from the 50s. And I think that the sort of name it's under is literally just Claudia or Giselle or anybody or whatever, I think is the literal name, if I remember correctly. I think that's probably the best place to find me. I sort of post about like where I'm performing as either a poet or an actress, and just general updates about the work, I'd say is the best. Yeah, that would be the best place to find me, I'd say.
Wonderful. And where can people pick up your latest book?
I think there's copies available on Amazon if you look up Are You Having a Good Time Yet by Giselle Linder. It might be on Barnes and Noble as well by this point. I actually have to check. And other than that, I'm very happy for people to message me on Instagram and I'll organize a copy if those aren't viable options.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for sharing. And we'll send all that in the show notes so you guys can connect. And I hope you keep creating, Claudia. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This was so lovely.
Thanks so much for tuning in to La Vie Creative. You can find more information on MissParisPhoto.com. And if you enjoyed this show, please feel free to share and spread the word for all my creative guests. We have the power to help them to keep doing what they love. See you next time.